what's going on, y'all? T-Bob here.
And Jake as well.
And you're about to watch a little OTB LSU.
We're going to give you all the latest, greatest between LSU football, baseball, women's basketball, softball, and everything in between.
Bottom line, if you want to talk Tigers, keep it locked, subscribe, like it, and we hope you enjoy the game. Why isn't LSU getting any 5 stars? And it kind of triggered something in my brain, Jake, where I want to ask the room a question. Do y'all find yourselves less married to recruiting rankings than you maybe were in previous regimes?
Well, yes, for a couple of reasons. One,
and why? Yeah, why would be the
it's
natural
never maybe been the thing that I pay attention to the most.
True.
I think you got to go out there. You have to recruit the players that you think can fit what you're trying to do, and because somebody else doesn't see the value they bring to your team, they're not going to value them as much as you do. So that's a part of it, but also the transfer portal. Now, you don't build your team through the portal. At least a lot of coaches are saying they don't want to, including Brian Kelly. But you're going to go get the best players. You're not going to deny if you have a 5-star corner like a Denver Harris and it's a position of need for you. You're going to go take that player. Now, your foundation is still probably coming from high school, but I don't put as much emphasis in it now because if you miss out on the big left tackle in recruiting, you can go get a left tackle out of the portal.
True. I hadn't really considered that. Mara, what about you?
Yeah, I agree 100%. And LSU has a good little strategy right now of getting Louisiana guys that originally didn't either get into LSU or didn't want to go to LSU, and then they come back years later after producing somewhere else. You're seeing that with Denver Harris, right? Louisiana kid.
Is Denver Harris from Louisiana? I don't think
Denver's from Houston. Greg Brooks is from Louisiana.
But
I mean, Logan Diggs.
Logan Diggs.
Running back
That's
from Louisiana.
that's another example. Yeah, so they seem to have it figured out. Recruiting definitely still matters, but like you said, not as much.
What about you, Taylor? Do you care as much as you used to?
So I've always been like a pretty close follower of recruiting.
Yeah.
But I've never followed stars. I've always looked at more like fit. You watch the tape of a guy, how good are they, that type of thing. Where they went to school, were they a bigger school? Were they a guy that was just slept on for whatever reason? That's what I look at more than stars. But I've always been like big into recruiting.
What about like raw team rankings? Because that's more of what I'm talking about. Like I feel like I've always said this. A golden rule has been I don't care about the micro, right? I don't care about the individual players. I more care about the macro. Are you keeping up with the Joneses essentially? And back in the day, I thought like if you're the LSU coach, you have to have a top 5 class. Like, maybe you won't get number 1, but, like, that is something that Miles used to be able to hang his hat on. That's certainly something that Ogeron was able to hang his hat on. But in a year you were down at, like, 8 or 9, it felt like, oh, man, that's, like, what's going on here? And so I guess it's interesting where now I find myself not really caring, never checking the team rankings. And I'm wondering, is it because I'm just simply getting older? And I'm just kind of, it goes year to year and it kind of is what it is. Is it because I think that Kelly is more competent at developing these guys? And then I remembered an athletic article from earlier this year that Brody wrote where I think part of it could be that we've seen here at LSU, the big names go bust and the small names go boom. Remember, we broke this down a couple of months ago. We are basically Iowa of the South. LSU is among the worst at developing, worst in the country, at developing 5-star prospects. In fact, LSU is the only team with more than 25-star signings during this decade, I think it was 09 through 19, the only team with more than 25 stars to send fewer than half to the NFL. So for whatever reason, the big names here have not always worked out. We're on the flip side. LSU's currently the 3rd best in the country when it comes to sending 4 stars to the draft and the 2nd best in the country when it comes to sending 3 stars to the draft. Maybe that has something to do with, certainly that's a feather in the cap for the Tommy Moffitt era of strength training, and Jake Flint will look to keep that going. Maybe that has something to do with Louisiana talent being undervalued. But I guess I was just kind of struck by the fact that he used to put so much into seeing and we used to really criticize and get angry if LSU wasn't in the top 5. And right now, you look, LSU's 14. And they'll climb. That's the On3 rankings I'm looking at. They'll climb, don't get me wrong. But I don't think they'll climb into the top 5. You know, they have one top 100 player right now. I think they'll get more, but I think they'll probably end around 8, 9, somewhere in there. And at one point, that would have felt like disaster, but now it doesn't. And I'm just kind of trying to explore why a little bit. Because, like, Jake, should you be worried about not keeping up with the likes of Georgia and Alabama and these other schools? When you look right now, I mean, in this class, what? Georgia's got 4 or 5 stars. Ohio State's got 3, 2. Alabama's got 3. LSU with 0. I mean, Georgia yesterday, on top of having the number 1 and 2 player in the country, they signed the number 1 outside linebacker in the country. And, like, that's who you're competing with. Like, that's who you're chasing. Like, LSU doing this can be better than 96% of the other schools in the country, but can you be that far behind with the big names and still contend for championships when it comes to like of a Georgia and Alabama?
Yeah, I completely understand what you're saying, because when you see the numbers of it, Georgia, and they're the back-to-back national champ and poised to make a run at a third. So I understand that. Now Florida's at the top 2, so like we'll see how those recruits pan out. But you still got to go get Jimmys and Joes. Like don't mistake what I'm saying. But when you look at maybe what, and they call it the path, and when you look at what Brian Kelly and LSU are doing, you can tell their point of emphasis is dominate Louisiana first.
Yeah.
And so that's what they're trying to do in this recruiting class. And it's not to say that they won't go other places in Texas and some of the other pipelines that LSU's created over the years. But right now, like, that is we got to do this. Like, this is number 1. We got to go win Louisiana. And I still think they'll end up in the top 10. They're not going to end at 14. That's your point. No. They won't end they might not end in the top 5. But you have to see how their recruiting process plays out, I think, before you really start to grade. I mean, in 21, I think they were top 3. I think they came at number 3 on 247 overall class. And then 2022, they took a little step back. But when you look like the 22 class and who's played, like one of the lowest rated guys in the class, Mason Taylor.
There you go.
That's the first one to play.
The development continues.
So, yeah, I mean, there's pros and cons. Like, we could go back and forth. Certainly, Georgia's dominating on all aspects. But remember, Georgia does not do a deep dive into the portal. Last year, they didn't take a single player. This year, less than 5.
Yeah.
So they're building their roster, and it's worked for them through high school. Alabama hasn't been, big into the portal. Some of these other teams have not been big into Clemson, who's here at number 6. They've taken 2 players out of the portal. One who signed with them, left and came back, and the other one, Bear Bryant's grandson, who Dabo Swinney played for at Alabama.
Yeah.
Or has a tie with. I don't remember if he played for him. I think he played for Gene Stallings, but
yeah, but he has
a tie to Bear. So that's how they want to build their teams.
And the Louisiana thing is interesting because you would have thought if Brian Kelly, I mean, what a lot of people thought at the onset is if he would have struggled anywhere, it would have been putting the gates up around Louisiana. But if he ends up signing, I mean, no LSU coach has ever signed the top 10 players in the state. And I want to say they're like 2 away from doing it now. And they'll actually have a chance to. They'll probably at least get 9 of the top 10. So he's absolutely put the fence up. Now, in these next 5 months, you just got to go prove that you can snag a couple of these top guys, right? Add some of the star power to the group. That said, though, I do trust the process of development, Brian Kelly's process that we've talked about. And it's impossible not to feel good about the competency given what you did results-wise relative to last year's talent level. So some interesting food for thought as we watch this go down over the next few months.
So here's the 2021 class. And so these are some of the players that are now going to be veterans on your team. Start to count on these guys. They'll be in their 3rd year on campus. Alabama finished 1, Ohio State 2, LSU 3, Georgia 4, Clemson 5.
Okay.
So, I mean, you could take a look at that. And obviously, like, those teams are going to be expected to be towards the top. But you have Miami, who finished in the top 10. Florida finished number 11. North Carolina finished 13.
2021, that's Ogeron, right? I'm not being dumb. Like, that's the Ogeron era? That's the last Ogeron class, right? Okay. Yeah.
So that's when you signed 23 players in the class. Mason Smith and Sage Ryan were the 2 highest rated players in the class.
Yeah. Well, I'm not counting Brian Kelly out in anything, and I love the Louisiana folks. In fact, the 13 signees from in-state are the 2nd most in the nation to Texas Tech, who all 17 commits come from Texas. Wow, Jake, what incredible takes.
I mean, those guys, they're just the best.
I think so. And if you think so, again, hit the like button, subscribe, ring the bell so you get notifications when we post every single day here on OTB LSU.